Now this might be easy at 30 degrees Celsius, but this is going to be cutting it fine at 25 degrees. I've got to create the leaven, mix the dough, bulk ferment, shape and proof, bake, and of course taste. And I know from experience, this can be jammed into 12 hours, but you are never 100% sure what's going to happen with sourdough. Right, so it's 7 in the morning and my ambient temperature, as I said before, is 25 degrees Celsius. So for me to be able to fit this bake into one day, I'm going to need to max out the amount of levain that I use to inoculate the dough. Now remember, if your kitchen is warmer, this process will go quicker. If it's cooler, well, you may have no time of fitting this in while it's still daylight. Now I've mixed 60 grams of sourdough starter with 60 grams of water and 60 grams of strong white bread flour. This is going to sit out at room temperature while I pray that it's not going to take all day to ferment. It's now 12 o'clock in the afternoon and it took 5 hours for my levain to ferment correctly. So we got to crack on. Now into my bowl goes 244 grams of room temperature water, followed by 9 grams of salt. Now I want to stir this mixture thoroughly to make sure that salt is well dissolved. Now I'm blending in 47 grams of home milled flour with 337 grams of strong white bread flour. Half the flour mix is then blended with the water. This is going to create a porridgey mixture. Now creating a consistency like this makes it really easy to blend in our sourdough leaven, which we have right here. It's nice and ripe, it tastes nice and sour, but it also tastes nice and yogurty and fruity. I'm going to add 163 grams into this loose porridge mix and then mix it really well. Now this recipe formula uses 35% sourdough levain to inoculate the dough. It's more than I normally use, but it should really kickstart this fermentation, helping me fit this into one day. Now if you want to improve your sourdough baking while making your life easier, be sure to check out my free sourdough calculator, which I will link in the video description. Now once this levain has been well distributed throughout the mix, we can add the remaining flour to the dough, and then we're just going to continue to mix with a spoon. Once the mixture becomes tight, you can use your fingers to pinch that dough together until it's nicely mixed. Now you don't need to worry about getting it smooth just yet. I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. Right, I'm going to get this covered and then I'm going to leave it to rest at 25 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. Right, now the 30 minutes has gone by, so I'm going to turn this dough out and I'm going to finish the mixing process. You can call it whatever you want. Mixing, kneading, turning the dough over. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, the aim is just to make sure this dough has been really well mixed. When we jump on to the next stage, you're going to see how the dough's transformed by that magical ingredient, time. We're going to get this shaped into a ball, popped back in the bowl and left once again for about an hour. Now just look at this dough, it has changed completely. It's only been an hour and a half since mixing and the dough is supple, it's smooth, it handles beautifully. Now I'm going to get this dough pulled out into a large rectangle. Now I'm not going to cry if it tears, but I am going to do it carefully just to try and avoid any rips. And once that dough starts to resist, I simply move on to another part and continue around the dough like that. Remember, the dough gives us all of the information we need to bake successfully. All we need to do is learn how to tune in and understand what's going on. Now this shot should give you some idea of how much strength the dough has developed over the last hour and a half, and we haven't really done anything. Now I'm going to fold this dough over 4 times to create a small square. You can do this any way you want. This is just a routine that I've fallen into. Now try and have a guess how long you think it's going to take to bulk ferment at 25 degrees Celsius using the 35% inoculation. You might just be surprised. Now the dough is covered, it's going to be left once again to continue its fermentation journey. I'm interested to know how long you think the dough actually took to ferment, because this is the dough after the lamination. It's nice and tight, it's pretty dormant, but no real signs of fermentation. And this is the dough right now. This is after 5.5 hours. And to be fair, I was thinking I'd be on track for a 5-hour fermentation, but it takes as long as it takes. We can see this dough has increased in volume by about 80%. It smells sour, but fruity, and we've got nice little bubbles on the surface. When we flip it out, we can see that the underside of the dough has got this really nice honeycomb texture, signifying a nice fermentation. Now, because this dough has only had one lamination, it's going to be quite relaxed and floppy. So I'm going to give it a quick Capri shape. And all I do is fold the dough up into a ball and leave it on the bench uncovered for about 20 minutes. Now after the rest, I fold the sides of the dough in and then I roll it up, keeping it under tension with a nice taut surface, but without degassing it too much. Now it's just a case of pinching that seam closed. I'm going to give it a quick bath in rice flour and the dough's going to rest in its basket covered with a bag at room temperature to proof. Right, so time to bake. Now, to be fair, I could have pushed this proof for about another 30 minutes, but call me a coward, I was a little bit nervous about the stability of this dough as it's at room temperature. But to be fair, it sits on the peel quite nicely. I was kind of expecting it to spread out just a little bit more. And after a quick score, this is going to bake on a baking stone that's been preheated to 220 degrees Celsius. Now this loaf baked for 20 minutes covered and 25 minutes uncovered. And you can actually see here where the dough's kind of spread out a little bit on the stone. It's lost a little bit of volume, but it still smells amazing. And you know what? While it's got a little bit out of shape and the crumb is a bit irregular, it's got this super sour flavour. The crumb is nice and creamy and not at all gummy. Now to be honest, this is not my favourite way to bake. You know, that was numerous hours of constant clock watching and I've been pretty much chained to the apartment. Now, I wanted to get this done in 12 hours, but my sourdough had other ideas. What did it take? I think it was about 12 hours and 15 minutes just to get this into the oven. And that reminds me why I love scheduling my bake properly over a couple of days. Do you like baking your sourdough in one day? Let me know if you've tried it, or let me know what your schedule is. Now, if you need to get your sourdough baking back on track, don't forget to check out my system, Reboot Formula. A huge thank you for watching. I'll see you again very soon. Stay tuned.